Today I want to talk about goals, specifically setting and attaining goals. Growing up, I didn't have anybody really in my life showing me how to set goals. I didn't have aspirations that were too big or exciting or scary. And, I didn't have a mindset that kind of had me thinking about the process of goal setting. It wasn't even in my vocabulary, to be honest with you. So the way that I have adopted this goal setting mindset or just cared to set goals is it sort of was born out of frustration and anger, disappointment. And it wasn't just these things happening every now and then. It was literally chronic disappointment and frustration. And out of these experiences and these situations where I find myself being really unhappy in a job, for example, I hated certain aspects of working for somebody else. In fact, when I graduated high school, I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to start working and just do my own thing. There was no aspiration to do the things that were expected of me in society, or things like where my parents didn't push me to go to college. There was no expectation there. So I immediately just wanted to get a job, and I found it really difficult to find jobs that I thought I wanted to do. And as I got into the workforce in my teens, late teens, 18, 19, 20, I was doing jobs that they didn't require a lot of skill. And that's not to say I didn't learn a lot, because in every single job that I've ever had, I learned a lot of things. But there was no real skill set that was required of me that was, required a bachelor's degree or a special certification or anything like that. And I found myself just being really frustrated, being at the mercy of a boss and coworkers and, the time clock and or the time card and the having to be at work at a certain time and oh, you have to do this and you can't take your break until then. And I really, really struggled with that. And when I was a kid, I really struggled with that, the certain constraints in school, you have to be there at a certain time and you leave at a certain time, and, you sit down and you shut up and you learn this and you learn that. And I really, really had a lot of anxiety in that school setting when I was a kid. And so then it didn't go away when I graduated high school and got into the workforce. So it's something that followed me. And so out of this frustration, pain, and anger, and really just this lost feeling, I started to realize that I wanted to do something bigger with my life and with myself. And I started to set goals and they weren't really goals, they were just ideas and they were thoughts that would run through my head. And so I would go, well, if you don't like your job, what else could you do? And one day the idea came to me to run my own business. And I had absolutely no clue what I would ever do, what kind of business. No clue. I mean, I knew I didn't want to work for a boss. I knew I didn't want to have this regimented, conventional life where I work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and I have Saturday and Sunday off, and I get 2 weeks of paid vacation a year, and I've got medical insurance, and this life that, it just didn't seem like it fit me, and it didn't make me happy. But I toyed with it for a few years, and out of that frustration came these ideas to set to go in a different direction, to create a life that I wanted to live according to me, not according to what society expected of me or what I thought I was supposed to do, because I was conditioned to think I needed to go a certain way. And I began to read a lot of books on running a business. I began to consider the idea of doing things that scared me, things way out of my comfort zone, things that made me understand, there's a lot of risk involved. If you're going to take this route, if you're going to run a business and be an entrepreneur, you're not going to have a predictable paycheck. You're not going to have somebody to tell you what time to wake up and what time to leave. You're going to have a bunch of kind of chaos and ambiguity, and you're going to have confusion, and you're going to have a lot of fear. And as I'm learning this, I began to look at my life and go, well, am I willing to stay where I'm at and be so miserable every single day? Or am I willing to chase those fears and pursue my dreams? And as time was going on at this point, I was dreaming. I was coming up with great ideas, and I was terrified. For the first time, I was really just scared. And I knew no one was going to help me. I knew that, there wasn't anyone in my family who were entrepreneurs or business owners. There wasn't any close friend or even an acquaintance who I could call and ask for advice. And I became sort of this sort of recluse with my growth during this time. I didn't ask for help. And the times where I did ask for help, because I guess there were a few as I'm thinking about it now, but I was rejected, and I was scared to ask. And when I would ask, I would get sort of these like responses from people where they just didn't, I could tell they weren't interested in really helping me or cooperating. So I closed down really quickly, and I kept things internalized, and I focused on reading books and experimenting a little bit. Every day, week, month, I would come a little bit further out of that comfort zone. And there was a quote that I wrote down, and I would read a lot, and I would think a lot about. And the quote is, "Leap and the net will appear." And only until I started taking action in the direction of this fear did I realize that quote was true. Because it sounds ridiculous, like leap and the net will appear. So jump off the cliff and just trust that this net will save you. And that's what's happened over the course of the last 12 years of running my business and doing the things that really scared me. And as I have evolved in my way of thinking and my systems of goal setting, have gained a lot of confidence and a lot of clarity in how to go about this process. And I think goal setting can be really, really tricky. First of all, it should be fun, and you should go back to when you were a kid and think like that. And what I tend to do when I need a refresher and I need to sit down and I need to write down what it is that I want for my life and come up with new plans, as I look at something like a life wheel, which you can Google, the life wheel, download that and fill out the life wheel. And this allows you to assess different areas of your life, your family, your relationships, your financial situation, your career. And you're able to rate each of these categories on a scale of 1 to 10. 0 would be absolutely, this is not going well for me. And a 10 would be, this is exceptional. This is amazing. I'm happy. I'm fulfilled. So if you have a really amazing relationship, you would rate that a 10. And so if you see this wheel as you're going around in the circle and you're rating it, some things are going to be lower than others, and other things are going to be up here high on a 10. This is where you get to see this big snapshot of your life and go, that's where I need to pay attention. And I start with that every single time. I assess my life wheel and I go, okay, well, I'm going to rate each of these areas of my life, and then I'm going to write down every single thing I want to do before I die. And you can find these kind of lists online. You can find like the 100 bucket lists, items and places to travel if you like to travel, things like that. And so I'll take that time and I'll write out as many things as I can think of, which this is not as easy as it sounds, but I'll think of all of the things that I want to achieve. And I'll have a notebook and pen. I don't do this on my computer. I do this. I want to see my handwriting. I want to write everything out by hand. And I'll write down everything that I want to do before I die. And that could include things with my career. That could include travel, things I want to do with my nieces, where I want to, take them to Disneyland or whatever, whatever places I want to explore in the United States and Alaska, fitness goals, every single thing that you can think of, everything, no matter how big or small, no matter how crazy, write it down. Give yourself a deadline. So yes, if you don't know, give yourself a 3-month, 6-month, 12-month, 5-year, 10-year deadline on each of these goals. And it's going to take you some time to do this. Give yourself 15, 20, 25 minutes to write out everything as fast as you can, just because if you give yourself a short time constraint of I only have 15 minutes to write down everything. Your brain will dump a little bit faster. But give yourself a longer period of time to write out the deadlines and kind of come up with the why. So for each of these things, include why they're so important to you. And this could take a while. This could take an hour. This could take maybe span it over a couple days. But give yourself, for each of these things, ask yourself why, and continue asking yourself, why do I want to do this? Why is this important to me? As you finish your whys, then move on to your hows. Well, give yourself a tentative plan. How am I going to accomplish each of these things? What do I need to do? Whose support do I need? Do I need money? Do I need to borrow money from the bank? And if I don't, great, I can start now. What can I do today to get myself moving forward? And you will find that it is so much easier and so much quicker to get a lot of these goals knocked off your list than you anticipated. But until you start working on these things, you have no idea where you're at. You have this sort of skewed perception of where you're at. So, break this down, get clarity, get a purpose going for why you want each of these goals, and continue to just write out as much as possible. And if you think you're writing too much, keep writing. If you're stuck on something, leave it alone, move on to something else, and come back to it later. You might find as you move down the list of things that you want to accomplish and these goals that you find the answer to that stumped one up top. You come back to it and you have a lot more clarity because now you've spent time answering all these other questions. And so having the powerful why and the desire to do something is your fuel. So that's what's going to get you through the hard days. That's, that when people go, well, what keeps you motivated? Well, it's like, well, I have a passionate, burning desire. I have a huge why for what I want. And what I encourage you to do is set realistic goals. There's the acronym SMART. And and I think that's great. We need to have goals that are realistic because it will keep us moving, and we'll see progress a lot faster probably than we will with thinking unrealistically. But I also encourage you to think unrealistically and get a little bit crazy, because your realistic is going to be different than my realistic. It's a very subjective thing, right? So our experiences are going to be a lot different. When I wanted to get married, I didn't want to get married in the conventional places that people get married. I wanted to get married on top of the Empire State Building in New York City. That was like, I knew what I wanted, clarity. I had a burning desire to do something big with my wedding. I wanted to make an impact in my life, in my wife's life. I wanted to have this experience that would be unforgettable. And it was very important to me. When I started my business, what was my why? Well, I want to change people's lives. Why? Well, I want to teach them everything that I know. I feel like movement and exercise and good nutrition are things that can completely change a person's life, completely change their mindset, be the remedy for depression and sickness. And I saw, my family growing up, people who, my grandmother, for example, who died of complications of diabetes, and I saw how sedentary her life was and her nutrition was poor, and I saw a better way for people. And so if you go back and you dig and you have these emotions connected to your why, they're going to be so much more powerful, and they're going to be these things that really drive you to move forward and make, continue setting goals and continue to think outside of the box and think outside of this comfort zone that we've been conditioned to think within. We all think a certain way, and it's crazy to think outside of that conditioning. You're insane, you're irrational, unrealistic. And if you look at the most successful people in our world, they were called crazy. They were considered unrealistic, and people laughed at them. I wanted to share this process with you really quickly. It's something that's really important to growth in life. And I'm going to continue this video in a part 2 where I share with you what to do after attaining goals, because there is a low point you may hit after attaining a big goal. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and feel free to share, ask questions, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you.